I did know it, yeah, but.
Thanks, I got it.
All right. I guess it's time for us to begin. Can y'all hear me back there? You in overflow? It's time for us to begin this evening. Lynn, would you lead us?
Father, we're so thankful for this evening that we can gather together. We're thankful, Father, for those that have gathered tonight to study your word. Father, help us to open your word and study your word in truth and in spirit, and help us to open our hearts and be receptive. Father, we're thankful for Jeff and teachers that spend the time to prepare, to help us to further understand what your will is for us. And we ask that you be with all the teachers tonight, with here and in other congregations throughout the kingdom, and with all the students. Father, in Christ's name I pray. Amen.
Thanks, sir. And last week we talked about fear and doubt and not allowing that to come in between our faith. Us and our faith. Yeah, I said at the end of the class we're going to cover just question 9 and 10 on the how would you respond questions on page 36. And I did that because the how would you respond questions on lesson 13 are going to be covered next week. So we may have a little bit of time to cover that. Okay, it's not the microphone. I heard a humming and, okay. Didn't know if it's just me losing it. On question 9 on lesson 12, page 36, it says, God expects too much from us. How can he expect us to give everything when we decide to serve him? How would you respond to that statement? Colleen?
We give 100% anyway, so it's a question of who do you give it to. We either serve Satan or we serve God, but you're going to give 100% to one or the other.
Okay.
So pick the better one.
Okay. Great.
So thought of the fact that God gave all, and he said Jesus who gave all while he was here, and so if the creator of the universe can give us all, why should he not expect the same in return from us?
Okay. That's good. That's something else. Jason, did you have something?
I guess I would ask, what do you mean by give everything? What exactly does what person is asking it mean? I mean, you're not becoming a monk, but it does require you to be dedicated to serving him and putting him first in your life. So, I mean, you're not walking up and down the road, reading your Bible to everyone and preaching 24/7. That's not, so I guess I would want to know kind of what does it mean for them to give everything? Does your life revolve around the Messiah? Does your life revolve around God? It should, but that doesn't mean you don't have other aspects of your life that you obviously would be able to take care of. And other interests, hobbies.
Right.
Like that.
Enoch walked with God and was taken. It's possible to please God. This everything is only our concept. It's not necessarily God's concept.
Okay.
The other thing I thought is the first part of that, God expects too much from us. And I think as you're deciding, what is my service worth, you can't ignore the promises either. You can't ignore the rewards that are waiting for those that diligently seek him. So which side of that coin you want to be on? Those who did diligently seek him and are rewarded, or those that didn't and are punished? So
Yeah. When you look at it from that aspect, it opens the door from I have to give everything to I get to give everything. As much as we give, that much and more will be given to us. when we look at the rewards that we have waiting for us, when we look at the joy that we have that cannot be taken away from us now, that puts things in perspective. It's not how much I have to give up. It's how much I get to give to God because of what He has given to me.
I think we also have to acknowledge that everything we have is His anyway. We don't have ownership, we just have a long lease,
Right.
I guess. So
That's a
it,
good
it, it, it doesn't belong to us in the first place.
Okay.
Just one other quick thing I thought of is, it's kind of an attitude problem. You know, everything that we decide to do is free will. We can choose whichever way we go, so choose well. You know, I mean, instead of looking at like, oh my goodness, I have to give everything? Are you kidding me? Everything? Then every decision that comes along, just remember how important God should be to you. Choose God in that moment, instead of letting it be an overwhelming thing that you're just dreading the rest of your life because nothing's yours, you know, or whatever it is that this person is thinking. You know, each choice, remember what God has done for you and what He's continuing to do and what He plans to do for you, and think, yeah, it's worth it.
Exactly.
That's just perfect. You know, you think when you first fall in love, and you just want to do anything for that person. I remember Jack, was talking about how he hated to iron his uniform, and I said, well, let me iron because I have to iron mine. And after we were married about 3 months, it's like, you know how to iron. So, I still kept ironing though, but when you know, if you think about, this is the God I love, and don't lose that sense of my whole heart, then it becomes a joyous thing to do, and you really want to do this, and you just have to watch your attitude and keep that, you know, that sensibility alive.
Yeah. Say that. I got for our 1-year anniversary, which I think is wood, or I think it's paper. And so I got a wood, paper made out of wood. So I got like a wood picture deal that says, you have my whole heart for my whole life. And that's what we are as Christians. You know, whenever I do something to Dawn to get her upset, or, you know, I'm just not the person that I need to be, I walk by that and I ask myself, am I giving her my whole heart? That's what we have to do as a Christian. God, you have my whole heart for my whole life. Do we do that? You know, because what we get back in return for giving Him our heart is a whole lot more than what little sacrifice that we have to give up now. It's a great thing to keep in mind. No matter what fear pops in our mind about what's going to happen to us, or doubts about, you know, am I going to get the reward? We have a whole Bible full of fulfilled promises that are given to us. God doesn't hear your prayers. Look at how many go unanswered.
Knows an answer.
What's that?
Knows an answer.
Okay. Rick?
One of the things I thought too, first of all, was what she said. Yeah, you know, the answer may just be no. You know, and He's not going to say it to you, but when it doesn't happen, the answer was no. You know, but also I was thinking of the fact that things are done in God's time. You know, so be patient, wait for it, as well as the fact that my asking for something may contradict part of His plan for someone else, and so it's not all about me; it's about a bigger picture. So if you take into account that there's a bigger picture and that God's time is what matters, and that the answer may be no, you kind of, you know, okay, what are you wanting about exactly then? And I'm not trying to belittle their whining, because it may be something very serious in their life. You know, they may have a loved one that's suffering and they just don't get it. And so I'm not saying that they shouldn't feel emotional about that, but we have to keep things in perspective, that there is something more important than this life at all times.
Right. That's good.
I always think of that old country and western song about thanking God for unanswered prayers, which are not really unanswered, but that God knows, as we put it, the whole picture, and what we ask for may not be what's best for us.
And it's crazy, that's an old country song.
I know, it's not just
When it was early 90s, I think.
Yeah, it's Oh, I didn't know, I think it was older, I think originally.
Garth Brooks.
Brooks early nineties as far as I know.
But still, that's a long time ago. It's just puts it in
Younger for y'all
perspective.
than me.
I was on Facebook earlier today and saw a post from an old girlfriend of mine from high school. And the post was something that I just completely didn't agree with, and I'm just sitting there thinking, you know, at the time, if I'd had my way, we'd have probably ended up together, kind of a thing, you know. Best I can remember that far back, but you know, our attitudes are totally different, and it was a political thing, but I mean, I'm sure that wouldn't be the only thing we differed on if our political
Right.
views were that different. It was just, you know, again, God knows the bigger picture, and we just have to try and be patient, and understanding, and trusting.
And I go to, my mind goes to James 4:3, where it says, "You ask and you do not receive, because you ask wrongly to spend it on your passions." God hears and answers every prayer that is made with a sincere heart. If we ask appropriately, we may not like His no, we may not like His not now, but like Debbie said, those are answers. That not now may be in our best, we may not like it, but it may be in our best interest. I want that job. Not now. You're not ready for that job now. You're not ready for that relationship now. You're not ready for whatever now. Those are answers.
Paul asked for his thorn in the flesh, whatever it was, to be removed 3 times, I think it was 3 times, and God said, "My grace is sufficient for you." There are certain things that He allows us to continue in, whether it's for our own good,
Right.
even though we don't think it is.
Yeah. He knows what's best for us. He knows what we need. We're going to kind of look at that a little bit when we get into this next lesson.
It's real easy to sit here and say this too, by the
Oh,
way, as
yeah.
opposed to living it.
Oh yeah, that's why I'm up here teaching you people.
That's right. I know the answers, it's just sometimes walking the
That's
walk
right.
is a little harder.
Just wait till we get to parenting. Anyways, anybody have any comments on either one of those questions, comments, whatever? Okay, we will move on. Go ahead.
I think it's helpful when somebody does say this. There are a couple of different ways that you can look at people, and since we're always supposed to give the benefit of the doubt, so apply it to this too, and that, you know, maybe they are really searching for the answer. Maybe they're not asking in a rejection mindset.
Right.
Maybe they're asking, you know, I struggle with this. You believe you have the answer? How is that? How is what you believe to be the answer the answer? Tell me how this works. So maybe these are introductions instead of challenges.
Right. That's a good point. That's something we got to keep in mind. And it's easy for us as we go through these questions here in class to have that mindset of, you know, just throwing out an answer because we're not talking to somebody. But when we are talking to somebody, know them, get to understand where they're coming from before we throw out an answer. Because it may not apply to them. We may be so used to talking to people or hearing people's stories that are coming from one area. This person coming from a different perspective, and we're trying to give them the same answer, and it's driving them away. So it's definitely something to be careful about.
Well, we should always, I think of the part about having our speech seasoned with salt. You know, we should always speak to people in such a way that we haven't slammed the door in their face in case we're wrong, in case we've misunderstood. Or, you know, even if we've understood correctly, we don't want to shut the door on being able to discuss it with them to help them. You know, one of the things I think we get way too caught up in is being right sometimes, you know, and it's not about being right, me being right. It's about us understanding what God's trying to tell us and helping that person, kind of like what she was saying, that person deserves our best answer, not our right answer. You know, the way we say it even matters.
Very good point. Move on to page 37, the lesson number 13. Deals with service through suffering. I keep getting the title mixed up. What's the difference between service through suffering and suffering through service? Suffering through service is what y'all are going to do Sunday when I'm preaching. But what is service through suffering? What does that mean to you?
Sounds like a good song to me. Ready to suffer.
Okay.
Serving when it's difficult, painful, really challenging.
Okay.
And that, so that was service of suffering, and suffering through service. It just seems very similar.
They are. I don't know if there's a difference between me switching those words around. I think it's the same thing, no matter what we're going through, our service to God should be there. And that's one of the things what we're gonna look at this evening and next week is, how is that even possible? How is that possible for us to do? And the first example we have in the book is Job. What did Job go through? How does he know anything about suffering? What did he lose?
He lives his life.
Just a little bit, just everything. The first question says, skim through Job 1 and 2 and note who was the source of suffering. Satan. How do we know that? What's that?
Says so.
Said so, okay.
That was his, he asked God.
Okay, in verse 6 it says, now there was a day when the sons of God came to present themselves before the Lord, and Satan also came among them. You ever wonder, man, what was that scene like? Man, just the sons of God coming to present themselves, and Satan's there. And the Lord said to Satan, from where have you come? Did God not know where he came from? No, I think he probably knew where he came from. Just like he said with Adam.
What comes to my mind is a different way of saying, what are you doing here?
I hadn't thought about that. Yeah, that's probably good. And he says, from going to and fro on the earth, and from walking up and down on it. And the Lord said to Satan, have you considered my servant Job? That there is none like him on the earth, a blameless and upright man who fears God and turns away from evil. And Satan answered the Lord and said, does God fear Job for no reason? Have you not put a hedge around him and his house and all that he has on every side? You have blessed the work of his hand, and his possessions have increased in the land. But stretch out your hand and touch all that he has, and he will curse you to your face. And the Lord said to Satan, behold, all that he has is in your hands. Only against him do not stretch out your hand. So Satan went out from the presence of the Lord. And then we see in the next chapter, chapter 2, that he changes from do not stretch your hand out on him to allow him to be affected, and allow Satan to afflict him with boils. What role did God play in Job's suffering? He allowed it?
He limited it.
Okay. What kind of God allows that kind of suffering?
Satan's kind of got a point, you know. Why wouldn't somebody that has had it good their entire lives want to serve this God, you know? And so I think it's kind of God knew Job's heart, and so it's God's way of proving himself right with Satan, because that's not the right attitude. But I guess opening Satan's eyes, you know, he knew all along how Job would react, and he needed Satan to see that for himself. It wasn't going to do him any good to say, no, his heart would be, you know, this pure no matter what happened to him. Because Satan wasn't going to believe that. You know, he had to witness it for himself, and so that's what God. That's why God did that.
Right.
It's kind of like Stephen, from seeing is believing. Not seeing.
Yeah, that's true. Arlie?
I just think this is just a little off what you're asking, but I wonder how many people
Exactly.
Sometimes I wonder if he always knows how we're gonna react. And sometimes I wonder if he's trying to help us see our strength for ourselves. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
You know, with some of the trials that we go through and stuff, he's helping us to see, oh wait, we really are stronger than we thought we were. Because, you know, never would have dreamed I would have been able to come through that with my faith intact, that kind of thing. Does that make any kind of sense?
Yeah, I think so.
I've many times in my life said, God thinks I'm a whole lot stronger than I think I am.
And he's just trying to prove it to us.
But it's also that we rely on God to show us that we can rely on Him.
Right. Yeah, but I think it's important to notice, there's a difference between God allowing things to happen to us, God allowing us to suffer, and Him being the cause of suffering. We see here in chapter 1, verse 11, Satan tells him, but stretch out your hand and touch all that he has, and he will curse you to your face. What's God do? He said, all that he has is in your hands. This isn't something that God does. This isn't something that God is inflicting Job with. In chapter 2, verse 5, same thing, but stretch out thine hand and touch his bone and his flesh, and he will curse you to your face. The Lord said to Satan, behold, he is in your hands, only spare his life.
Does anyone ever though read from the beginning and go, wow, God really threw him under the bus? Because just like He knows us, He knew Satan, and by challenging Satan with Job's faithfulness, it was almost a test for Satan. It's just I don't know. That part of it has always puzzled me, not the.
Right. And I look at that, there's a lot of questions that I have in my mind surrounding Job and how this happened. Did God have a hedge around him where He wasn't allowing him to be tempted? He wasn't allowing him to face sin? No. We see that he continually offered sacrifices just to make sure that, hey, if anybody in my family sinned, I want to make sure that everybody is taken care of, that everybody is protected, that, you know, all the sin is accounted for. And I've said this before, but it's becoming one of my favorite verses in the Bible, and it seems like such a simple verse that really doesn't have a whole lot of meaning to it. And that's Job 1:1. There was a man in the land of Uz whose name was Job, and that man was blameless and upright, one who feared God and turned away from evil. There was a man in the land of Uz. What do you think special about it? When I think about the things that the apostles did, when I think about what Paul went through, when I think about all the persecution that they endured, they were special people. They were given special powers by Christ Himself. I can't relate to that, but I can relate to the man who was from the land of Uz.
That first sentence tells you that there was no hedge because he turned from evil. So obviously from temptation, he obviously was presented with it and made the right choice.
Yeah. And, you know, just all the suffering that he went through. I mean, a tenth of that we can't even imagine ourselves going through. Losing every single one of your kids at one time. You know, losing everything you had in your life.
Just back to what Arlene said, and God knew that there was going to be a book written about Job. So yes, countless people were going to be, but Job didn't know it. I mean, there's nothing in there saying that God came to Job ahead of time and said, "No, be sure you do this right. I'm going to report this." And so it's still an encouragement for us, I think, again, to stay faithful throughout suffering, because we don't know who's watching. We don't know what we're doing for God when we make right choices, when we stay the course, when we endure things, when we don't curse Him to His face over something that He doesn't, you know, that, well, He doesn't deserve it ever. But, you know, when we do what we're supposed to, if we think back about Job, then that's one of the simplest but most important lessons we can gain from him, is that people were watching Job still today, and people are watching us. and how we respond to every single thing we're faced with. Again, it goes back to what we were talking about earlier. You have to choose God. Every time you're facing something, you have to choose God, because the devil, the enemy, whoever they are and what form they're taking, they're waiting for you to mess up so that they can point to you, call you hypocrite, call you whatever it is. They're looking for that, and so we have to be sure that we're being faithful all the time.
And this is the embodiment of the title of the lesson, Service Through Suffering. Well, he's got the boils, and he's taking that potsherd, the pottery, and scraping the boils off. His wife comes into the room. And, you know, look at you. Shall we indeed, or what'd she say, shall we, see, I'm getting them all confused now.
Curse God and die, she said.
Yeah. Do you still hold fast to your integrity? Curse God and die. His response was, you know what? You may have a point. Why am I going through all this? I don't deserve this. I've been faithful. I've been blameless. It says so at the very beginning of the book. No. It says, shall we indeed hold fast, shall we indeed accept good from God and not accept adversity? Do we respond like that when we're faced with suffering? When we're faced with injustices that happen in our life that we can't explain? We need to look not only into ourselves, but look into God and into His Word to find that hope, to find that faith, to find that endurance, that no matter what happens to us.
The other obvious or often used example of this is Joseph. You know, when he says, you know, God, you meant it for evil, but God meant it for good. You know, that sort of thing. To have that mindset throughout everything that both Job and Joseph went through, it's kind of mind-boggling.
Right. Mike?
Job is probably our best example of the verse that says, draw close to God and the devil will flee. And sure enough, God didn't really put a hedge around it. The devil just didn't want to hang out with him. You know, it's like if you pick who you're going to hang out with, it influences a lot of things. And you look at the adversity that Job had. The devil inflicted it and then left. I mean, he didn't hang around. And Job had to. I don't know that Job looked at it as he questioned God about why is this happening. But I don't think that he ever looked at it as just devastating, because God, he knew God get him through it.
And that's something for each one of us. You know, we don't understand a lot of the things that go on in our lives. We may never understand it, but we understand who it is that gives us strength. You know, Philippians 4, it says, what is it? I can do all things.
I was thinking of Ryan's sermon in Isaiah, and here am I, send me. And so many times we question, why me? When really, why not me? You know, if suffering's out there, why do we think we should be exempt from it? You know, I mean, that doesn't mean I seek it or want it, don't get me wrong, but if it befalls me, you know, who am I to say why me, instead of just picking up the challenge and seeing, well, what can I do with this? And it's easier said than done, I get it, but why not me?
Right.
The other thing, kind of the flip side of this is Job, not only did Job not give up on God, he didn't give up on himself. So many times we say, what did I do? And his friends were, blasting him with, you must have sinned. You think you've sinned. You've done, something. And yet he knew that he had obeyed. He knew that his faith was true, and he knew that he had done right in God's sight. He didn't succumb to that. And I think that's important, that when you're going through it, people say, well, obviously you're not living your life right. That's not. Certainly we examine ourselves, but if that's not the case, we don't change our beliefs because we're suffering.
Right. I was getting into Romans 8. I was doing a lot of reading and watching videos and things like that, trying to get a grasp of Romans 8. And one of the guys I was listening to said, hey, guess what? We're all going to get kicked in the face at some point in our life. Whether you're a Christian or not, you're going to get kicked in the face. Every single person on the face of the earth is going to suffer. How do we get through it? That's the question.
Well, the apostles asked Jesus, did this guy sin, or was it his parents, you know? It's the common thing that if things go bad, you're in the wrong. So, I mean, and it goes from age to age. It's not just one single age.
Right. Now, Romans 8.
9 minutes.
Romans 8. We've got 10 minutes to cover, 9 minutes to cover Romans 8.
Hurry.
Romans 8, starting in verse 18, it says, for I consider that the sufferings of this present time are not worth comparing with the glory that is to be revealed to us. For the creation waits with eager longing for the revealing of the sons of God. For the creation was subjected to futility, not willingly, but because of him who subjected it, in hope that the creation itself will be set free from its bondage to corruption, that will be set free from its bondage to corruption and obtain the freedom of the glory of the children of God. For we know that the whole creation has been groaning together in the pains of childbirth until now. And not only the creation, but we ourselves, who have the first fruits of the Spirit, groan inwardly, as we wait eagerly for adoption as sons, the redemption of our bodies. For in this hope we were saved. Now hope that is seen is not hope, for who hopes for what he sees? But if we hope for what we do not see, we wait for it with patience. We'll stop right there. What does this section mean? What is it talking about? Arlene? Tell me, please.
Just my thought, he's come full circle from the first chapter in talking about the creation, and how mankind has been corrupt in looking at creation and acting as though we're just, basically animals and do what you want to do and then he starts to take, from the first chapter, then he takes the reader through basically the history of God's saving people, from pre-Jews to post-Jews, and then he's back to creation talking about it. So this is one huge cycle, but what it comes down to is where it's going to stay in a few verses down, is they're talking about how it has meaning, going from the meaningless to the meaningful. In verse 32, he who did not spare his son, but delivered him over for us all of mankind, how will he not also with him freely give us all things? So now he's taking us from this level up to the spiritual level. And, so when Paul talks about things like the inner man and the outer man and so on, he's getting us thinking about that. We've got this world and this reality, and then we've got the one that's really worth something, that world and that reality, and all the history in between. So that's what I think it's about.
Okay. Anybody else have any thoughts or ideas on what that means? It's really interesting, and it's hard for me to wrap my mind around everything that's being talked about here, because he talks about, at the very beginning of verse 19, for the creation waits with eager longing for the revealing of the sons of God. What's the creation he's talking about? Everything. When you think about that, what happened to everything he created when man sinned? It was corrupted. It became perishable. What did creation do to deserve that? You know what man did?
But don't you think man is also part of this creation that he's speaking of?
I think so, to an extent, yeah. I think so. It had no part in sin. The creation, we think about the flowers, we think about the trees, we think about the animals, they had no part in man's sin. And everybody was just happy, going along. But he says, the creation waits with eager longing for the revealing of the sons of God. For the creation was subjected to futility, not willingly, but because of him who subjected it, in hope that the creation itself will set free from its bondage to corruption and attain a freedom of the glory of the children of God. When I look at this scene, this kind of really trivializes it. But I think the TV show, Fixer Upper. How many of y'all have seen Fixer Upper? What happens at the end of the show? Reveal. They have the big old canvases that they roll away, and what do the homeowners do? Oh, they jump for joy, start crying, because it's so beautiful. And I think about this creation that was made to be perfect. That's how God made it. That's what it was made for. And it was corrupted because of us. It eagerly waits for Christ's coming. That's pretty cool. It's hard to wrap my mind around, but that's pretty nice visual, pretty interesting visual. Then it talked, go ahead, darling.
Well, I'm just thinking so many lessons in Ecclesiastes that we had, talking about the futility and not getting wrapped up in creation and this outer world. And I think it just ties in beautifully with Romans.
Right. And I think there's, when you mentioned about, including the humans in this, I think there's an aspect to that. But there's differentiation through here when it says in verse 23, not only the creation, but we ourselves. There's a difference between the creation and us. Because he makes that specific here. Not only the creation, but us. Ourselves, who have the first fruits of the Spirit. Now that's different from, all mankind. This is those who are in Christ who have the first fruits of the Spirit, grown inwardly as we wait eagerly for adoptions as sons, the redemption of our bodies. We have something that nothing else in creation has. What is that? Hope.
Oh, okay.
That too. Okay, there's a couple things we have. But we have that hope. Animals don't have that hope. Flowers, the trees, they don't have that hope. But we have that hope. How does that help us out here? What is that telling us?
What Paul says from the beginning of this section, which is what we go through now is pales by comparison to what we have waiting for us if we but endure. And through this, we see that God has not abandoned us to the sufferings. He's there, and he offers us the Holy Spirit to intercede for us. Just thought I'd get that in there. And then he later Christ intercedes for us as well. But there are a lot of things there. But I go back to the very beginning when man sinned, and I believe this is literal, because just like the fruit that was eaten literally was a tree of knowledge, there was a tree in that same garden that would have allowed them to live forever. But God knew that to live forever on this earth, corrupted as it had become, was not what he wanted for man that he created. So he took that tree and I don't know what happened to it. Revelation says it's in heaven, but I don't know. But I believe it was literal, and he took that it's one of those for our own good things, so that we wouldn't have to suffer in this, we would have the hope of that immortal body.
Right. And I think when we look at this picture as a whole, we look at how he starts with creation, yearns and longs for that day when Christ comes, when he is revealed, when the sons of God are revealed. It longs for that day. It didn't do anything to deserve what it got. How much more should we long for that day? How much more should we, who deserve the suffering that we get because of our sin, because of our selfishness, how much more should we long for that day when he comes back and makes us perfect, makes us whole? Doesn't matter what happens to me. It doesn't matter what I go through, what my family goes through. It doesn't matter how much I have on my shoulder. I have a faithful Savior. I have a faithful God who promises that He's there with me no matter what happens. We are going to stop right there, and we will pick up there next week, and then we'll go through the how would you respond questions. Thank you for your comments, all of them, except Rick's.